Hey everyone, welcome back to Talking Sense. I'm Ben. Today's Valentine's Day, so happy Valentine's Day, I guess. I looked around and a lot of the YouTube channels that deal with fragrances and stuff are doing their top Valentine's fragrances or their most favourite sexy Valentine's fragrances or whatever. So I'm a crazy old cat person, so I've decided to go completely opposite. And today I'm going to be reviewing this little bottle of Thunderstank, which is Serge Lutens Bapteme Du Feu. Serge Lutens Bapteme Du Feu. What do you say about it? Do you know what? I have no idea what I'm going to say about it. This review, I mean, it's going to be, I really don't know. First things first is look at the colour of that juice for a start. That is a beautiful colour. It's just this deep red. It tells you a little bit about what you to expect from the fragrance, I guess. But not that much. A little bit. You have the kind of this nice gunmetal-y kind of top here and then the kind of deep blood red juice. It's beautiful. It was released in 2016 and it's a black label Serge Lutens, so it means that it's the higher EDP concentration. It's what do they call it? I think EDP Hauteur or something, which is supposed to be more concentrated than regular EDP. The note listing, I mean, for all it's good, is gingerbread, gunpowder, mandarin, castoreum, osmanthus and woody notes. Good luck. I'm just going to spray it and I'm just going to go through it. I've got the dry down on this wrist as well, so and I'll spray it on this wrist to give you the opening. And I'm just going to talk you through my experience with the wares of this and try and explain it. What I'm going to say off the top is this came out when Serge Lutens was a lot of people who love Serge Lutens were saying, using words to describe his newer fragrances like derivative and boring, and I think a lot of people started to feel that he'd lost some of that kind of creative edge. A lot of the releases coming from Serge Lutens were they'd lost that eccentricity and the creative edge. Well, Bapteme Du Feu, go and smell this if you're one of those people that would nod in agreement with that idea. Bapteme Du Feu is the one, because I can honestly say now there is going to be a ton of people who have been into fragrances longer than me, and have smelt more than me and have had more exposure to fragrances than me. But I'll say that I got into fragrances in the mid-90s with things like L'Eau d'Issy Bohème and CK1 and Calvin Klein Eternity. This is about 94, 95-ish. And I can honestly say that since that point, I've never smelt anything like this. Okay, so let's have a look at the opening and, talk about what it smells like. Okay, so right off the bat, you get this offensively metallic, harsh mandarin orange. It's very green. And you would say there's some neroli in there, a little bit. It is absolutely bone dry, and it almost catches your breath when you smell it. It's difficult to quite explain. It's quite textural. It's incredibly hot smelling, and it just feels aggressive, hot, burning, like burning hot metal. There's a touch of something medicinal in there, which dips down but comes back later. It smells a little bit like cough sweets or cough medicine, but it doesn't really, it's not up front and it doesn't really last. The big part is the metallic smack in the face that this opening is. It's got just a savagely bitter mandarin orange in there that's like the rinds of the orange. It's not the fruit, it's not juicy, it's definitely like this bitter green mandarin. But with that's mixed just this harsh metallic note, It's nice and I really like it, but it's not going to be super pleasing. I would say it gets quite pleasing, but I tend to not spray this. If I'm going out, I would spray this sort of 15-20 minutes before, because then I know that this is not going to be what other people are going to be smelling, because it's quite obvious from first sniff that this is not going to be something that everyone is going to like. But I tell you what, and I don't want to get too graphic or crass here, but this fragrance is unbelievably sexy. But it's not sexy in a nice way. It's sexy in an absolute filth way. If you're quite a flirty person and you quite like, that having that edge, I think you'll like this. It's, say, to call it sexy, it's 100% what it is. But to call it romantic, absolutely not. This is throw down to the. So I don't want to get crass, but this is definitely, filth, absolute pure filth. This is definitely a sexy, filthy beast. So after about 5 to 10 minutes, things start getting a little bit calmer. Things start getting a little bit back to reality. What sort of starts emerging for me, and again, this is probably the clearest part of the fragrance for me, and it doesn't last overly long before it abstracts and turns into this washy watercolour. But what I get after about 5 to 10 minutes, and it lasts for a good sort of 10, 15, 20 minutes, is a thick, creamy, almost fruity floral, or sort of apricot sort of floral. And I'm pretty sure that's osmanthus. And it's a little bit classical almost. It's a little bit old school. And I say that this is the only part of the fragrance for me that has a real definition. It smells like a very thick, creamy floral, and it's very pleasant. It's really nice. It's really, really nice. But it is a little bit classical and a little bit old school, and it does make me feel a little bit of old ladies, which is not flattering, really. But the thing is it still has that metallic note running through it, so that gives it a bit of spark, a bit of interest, and it brings it back to modernity. It doesn't get stuck in like the 50s. It doesn't feel. It's got that classical vibe, but it doesn't feel old-fashioned. It just feels quite classy, to be honest. As that progresses, the medicinal element starts coming out again, and you get these sort of just streaks that run through it every now and then. It depends on how you catch it, of this almost like medicinal cherry note, which it doesn't last, and it doesn't feel overly medicinal, so don't worry about that. But it just gets like sort of almost like streaks through it. If you imagine it like a painting, which I sort of do imagine this fragrance like a painting in my head, I can just imagine someone sort of flicking the brush and the paint just across the canvas, and that those little kind of streaky splatters of this medicinal straight through it. But it's nice. I like it. I think it gives it something. It's almost mentholated, and it's really nice. And it helps with the metallic note a little bit as well. It helps sort of ground that metallic note a little bit, because the metallic note is there and will be there throughout. And then as that sort of progresses, now we're starting to get to this sort of. It drops a lot of the kind of complex mishmash that you get at the start. That is so hard to describe, and it starts to become almost like a very floral with the you still get that thick creamy apricot that I was mentioning, that almost very sort of heliotropic kind of sexy floral, with a almost like a ylang ylang. It smells to me like ylang ylang with a metallic kind of vibe starts coming through, but it's a very light. You get all the stems, all the leaves, all the greenery as well, so it's not overly floral. It's more like a garden, and that starts coming out. But to call it a floral would be difficult. I wouldn't say this is particularly a floral fragrance. A lot of people say this is they feel that this is a gourmand fragrance or it edges towards gourmand. Well, I'm going to say straight off the bat, I really don't think that. I don't get any gourmand vibes from this whatsoever. But later, after about 1 to 2 hours, this gingerbread is going to come out. But it's not gingerbread. If you were to say gingerbread, I think you would be disappointed if that's what you were expecting, because it's not overly sweet at all, and it's much more like a raw ginger. The sweetness in this is very watery, and it's not vanilla or benzoin. It feels almost like it could be like a watery tonka, but it definitely has this watery vibe to it. It doesn't feel thick or creamy. It's very sort of this like easy running watery sweetness that doesn't get cloying, and that runs throughout really from about the hour mark. You also get these kind of caramelized wood that comes out. It is definitely a woody smell, but it's very, say, caramelized. It feels like a gently kind of burnt, sugary, sweetened woods, which is beautiful, to be honest. It's one of my favourite facets of the dry down. And with the ginger that never gets over the top, you get this kind of mix, and it turns it almost like an incensey kind of vibe with this kind of smoky incense. And then at the same time, I'm gonna be honest, it gets a little bit animally and dirty and skanky. There is definitely a kind of urinary, urine, basically piss smell in there, but it's not strong. It's not overly strong, and it blends with the metallic notes and the ginger to sort of tone it down a little bit. So it is very animalic and dirty and a little bit skanky, but I don't really like animalic skanky notes, and I think this is gorgeous. What I think this perfume is really good for is if you're kind of interested in something really interesting, definitely is good for that anyway. But if you're interested in kind of dipping your toes into those kind of animalic, kind of dirty scents, but you find them often to be just a little bit too much and a little bit stomach churning, I think this is a really good one, because it definitely has like animalic vibes to it, and it definitely gets skanky, but it's never too much. It remains on a kind of safe side of that, and no one is going to smell you and say, "God, you smell like piss." That's not how it sits in this fragrance. I'm saying that it's got this kind of urine kind of vibe, but that's because I'm trying to break it down for you guys. But to smell it as a whole, you would never say that smells pissy. It smells it's almost like just a metallic, watery vibe that mixes with the ginger and the incense and the woods. So it doesn't get that, but it's definitely, so to break it down, it's definitely a bit skanky, definitely a bit animalic. The thing I think to remember about all of this, across all of this, what I've just explained, is none of this stuff is very defined. So you know, sometimes you'll get a perfume or a fragrance and you can smell it and you can say, boom, that's Yang Lang, that's Turkish Rose, that's cedarwood. You know, you can, they're really almost photorealistic. This fragrance, absolutely not. It's all just this watercolory, abstract, shifting, constantly shifting abstraction. It's quite hard to define anything in it, and it is certainly a challenge to break it down and to wear and to enjoy in a way. But I think once you kind of, I've just caught it from far away. It smells, or not far away, but from, to catch it on just like this, it's just a gorgeous scent. It really is a gorgeous scent. and I think for all of its challenge, I think it's 100% worth it. I think it's a beautiful fragrance, and it's not. I'm not. It's not as challenging as I'm making it out. It's not that bad. It's not anything like civet or anything like that. It's like some of the zoologist stuff that gets real kind of nasty and fecal. It's nothing quite as aggressive as that, anywhere near really. It's much more pleasant, it's much more pleasing, but it's 100% not a fragrance for everyone. It's not a pleasing, like, mass appeal fragrance. I think what it is a beautiful, soft, fruity floral with some fantastic ginger elements, and if you're interested in metallic elements at all, it has that throughout the wear, and it's a really interesting one, and with a little bit of skunk to kind of dirty it up, and it sort of retain that kind of dirty, bitter edge, which I think is a really nice mix. If you're a bit flirty, if you're quite if you want to kind of present yourself in this kind of mysterious, little bit kind of edgy way, I think it's great. I think it's definitely quite dark and dank. Time of day to wear it, I think, is evenings for sure. I think you could wear it in the daytime because that fruity kind of floral edge is fine. But I think it lends itself to evening. I think it would sing in the evening. Weather-wise, I don't know, to be honest. I've only ever worn it in the cold weather, and it has really, really worked. I do think it might work summer evenings, but I don't think it would work in the heat, like high heat. I think it would get quite cloying. I think that osmanthus and ylang ylang, and that, especially with that opening, that kind of burning metal, hot, textural opening is not going to work in the summer. It's going to be vomit inducing, to be honest. If it's going to be hard. It will be a struggle. But I do think in the evenings, like the cooler evenings of summer, I think absolutely 100%. But it's just a beautiful fragrance, and I'm not upset by it at all. I think it's really good. I think it's really interesting. I think it's really creative. I think it's really eccentric. It's absolutely like abstract. Perhaps if you don't like that, you won't like it. If you don't like that, if you prefer photorealistic scents, this is not for you. It's because there is nothing really photorealistic in this. If you read the reviews and you see all the people say, this leans gourmand, don't believe them for a word. It doesn't. It has gourmand notes in it. It's got ginger in it, but the ginger in it is incredibly raw and dank. To be honest, I've smelled this fragrance a fair bit now, and there is not once for a split second where I thought, I'd like to eat that. That smells like something I want to eat. That definitely 100% no. But otherwise, I think it's beautiful. I think it's absolutely beautiful. I think it's fantastic and absolutely unisex. I think it's such an abstract fragrance that it doesn't matter. It really doesn't. Like anyone could wear it, and it will, I think, work the same on everybody. So that's pretty much my thoughts on Serge Lutens Bapteme Du Feu. The colour of that is just incredible. If you're into the colour of it, just buy it because it's worth a crack. I think this review is almost, I'm going to tell you now at the end of it, almost pointless, because I've never smelled anything like this. I've never had to try and describe anything like this, and I think everyone will possibly experience this slightly differently because it is so abstract. And I do think what I said is a representation of what you will get the smell of. Say thick, creamy, like apricot fruity floral that chills out into a kind of very ylang ylang and osmanthus kind of floral with stems, flowers, ginger that's raw, the incense, say all of these things, they're definitely in there. You'll definitely smell them, but it is all just undermined by this harsh metallic burning metal with a kind of caramelized wood, gentle incense. I don't know how, I've never smelled anything like it. If you've got any comments, stick them in, like, subscribe, all that kind of stuff if you want. Happy Valentine's Day, I guess. Serge Lutens, Bapteme Du Feu, screw Valentine's Day.